This week, we're looking at a way to use the future tense to express skepticism or even cynicism. So let's take a look. We are considering the deliberative future. So the deliberative future poses a question that sort of demands skepticism or presumes that it's a specious question to begin with. It substitutes for a question in the subjunctive mood, which is frequently in the aorist tense, although other tenses are present and possible. And this is important. It addresses either a cognitive incongruity or a volitional incongruity. What do we mean? A cognitive incongruity is one about logic, like the thing that you're asking about is logically disconnected. This doesn't make any sense. Then the volitional side would be that either relationally or for some other reason, this is a choice that a person probably wouldn't make. It's about the choosing, the volition. And we're going to take a look at an example of each today. In fact, in the first one, we're going to see a couple examples of cognitive incongruity. So let's start out in Romans chapter 6, verses 1 and 2, and we'll begin with a reading in the English from the ESV. What shall we say then? Are we to continue in sin that grace may abound? By no means. How can we who died to sin live in it? So in verse 1, we're going to see both a deliberative future and a deliberative subjunctive, the thing that it normally replaces. So let's dive in Koine. Tiun erumen. So tiun erumen is, T is what, un is therefore or then, and erumen, this is going to catch you by surprise, is a future active indicative first person plural from lego. We should say, or we shall say. So if we isolated the word erumen by itself, it literally is we shall say. But this is a question, so let's flip that. Shall we say? Shall we say what? That's exactly what Paul writes. T, what, un, then, erumen, shall we say. What then shall we say? So notice it's introducing with this question another question, right? So it is a question, but it's asking us to consider something else. So this is something very common for Paul. He writes frequently this phrase, what then shall we say? And when he does, it always introduces sort of a hypothetical that has an answer that you will surely want to reject, right? Which brings us to the second half of the verse. Epimenomen te hamartia hina he charis pleonase. So epimenomen te hamartia. Epimenomen is in the subjunctive mood, and it is first person plural. Notice that just like erumen, it has that omen ending. It's the first person plural. Should we continue? So epimeno, continue, abide upon. So should we continue, te hamartia, in sin? And then he gives us the follow-up, hina he charis pleonase, in order that grace should increase or might increase. So should we continue in sin in order that grace might increase? The deliberative future primes us, right? When he says, what shall we say? It primes us for this kind of nonsensical question. Should we carry on in sin? Should we abide in it? Should we remain in it so that grace has an opportunity to increase? We could have even more grace if we stick with sin. So Paul is obviously priming us with this sort of nonsensical question. Let's look at verse 2. Me genoito. So genoito is in the optative mood. We don't get a lot of optatives in the New Testament, and it's negated, me. Me genoito. Genoito is from ginomai, it shall come to pass, or it may happen. May it never come to pass. May it never come into being. Some translations translate it, God forbid, or perish the thought, right? This is in the optative, the mood that talks about conceptual considerations. Don't even let this idea cross your mind that we should remain in sin so that grace should increase. That's how ridiculous it is. Don't even let it cross your mind. Then we get to our second part, where we get our deliberative future. Hoitines apethanomen te hamartia pos heti zesomen en aute. So the first half, hoitines apethanomen te hamartia, since we died to sin. So hoitines is we who have, or since we have. You know, it's a difficult to translate notion, but it deals with the subject of the subsequent verb. Like, because we're the ones, and then apethanomen, we have died to sin, te hamartia. Since we died to sin, then we get our deliberative future, zesomen, pos heti, how, zesomen, shall we live in the future, heti, still, en hote, in it. Since we died to sin, how shall we still live in it? So look at that cognitive incongruity built into this deliberative future. Zesomen, shall we live in sin? No, we shouldn't live in sin, because we already said we died to sin. So there's a cognitive, logical incongruity. Now we're going to look at two examples of deliberative futures that are volitional, and these are in Matthew 17:17. First, the English. And Jesus answered, O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him here to me. So this comes to us from a story of a demon-possessed child that the disciples couldn't cast the demon out of, and they come to Jesus and tell him about it, and he expresses great frustration with them. Let's look specifically at the two things that he says to them. How long am I to be with you, and how long am I to bear with you? First up, how long am I to be with you? Heos pote methumon esomai. So heos pote is literally until when. But in English, that doesn't make a great deal of sense. So in English, we tend to translate this as how long. So heos pote, how long, methumon, with you, and then we get our deliberative future, esomai, which is the first person singular of me in the future tense. I shall be. But here again, it's a question. So how long with you shall I be? Fantastic question. And you is plural here. How long shall I be with you, plural? Then we get the second part, heos pote, how long, anexomai, humon. Anexomai is, shall I put up with you? Again, deliberative future. How long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? And anexomai comes from the word support. Like, how long shall I keep propping you up, is what he's saying to them. Shall I continue propping you guys up despite you showing yourselves to be a perverse and twisted generation? I've called you, I've sanctioned you, I've commissioned you, I've empowered you to do this thing, but you can't do it. Why? Because you're faithless and twisted. You're perverted. The word perverted here has to do with something being twisted from its primary purpose to some other purpose. So these are both volitional, deliberative futures. It's not about a logical incongruity, it's more about a relational incongruity. with everything that we've been through together, I can't believe that we're still going through this kind of nonsense. How long should I choose to continue to be with you? How long should I choose to continue propping you up? This is the volitional choice that is being put forth. And remember, the deliberative future shows us something that we should probably reject. What he's saying is, anyone going through an experience like this with you guys would probably give up on you, right? That's the message in the deliberative future here. In this case, the volitional deliberative futures. So you people are wearing me out with your faithlessness and perversity. How long should I be expected to continue with you and to put up with you? Pretty magnificent. The skepticism is implied in that question, should I put up with you? And the obvious answer is probably not, right? But the good news is he does continue with them. He does continue to put up with them. So there we have our deliberative future, both the cognitive and the volitional, that are substituted for what we would expect from the subjunctive. It looks at a question that has a presumably skeptical or cynical answer. Should I continue putting up with you guys? Come on, not really, the way you're behaving. Should you go on sinning if you've died to sin? Obviously not. That's illogical, right? So we see how those things work. That's our deliberative future. Either logically or volitionally, cognitively or volitionally, it shows us sort of the built-in nonsense of the thing that's going to come out of the situation. Grammar is great. The deliberative future. You'll find it all throughout Paul's writings, especially where he poses a question that the answer, if you were to say yes to the answer, it would almost be ridiculous. And it's his way of making his point by saying, surely, obviously, you wouldn't do this, right, in the future. Shall we do this? No, we shouldn't, because it's ridiculous, whether logically or by basis of what a normal person would choose. Grammar is great. If that was good for you today, I hope you'll like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends. Keeps the channel going. And until we see one another again, Charis Kai Irene Humine, grace and peace to you.